Welcome to the Immigrant Entrepreneurs Podcast, episode 36.
The White Australia policy started in 1901 and ended in the 1970s, where if you were a non-white person, you were not legally allowed to move to Australia. You were not legally allowed to live in Australia.
Wow.
And so my parents were one of the first, when the doors reopened to the world, my parents were one of the first colored immigrants into Australia.
My name is Alina Warwick, and I'm honored to have Fiona Gilbert on my show. Fiona was originally from Malaysia, but when she was young, her family moved to Australia, where she spent all of her young adult life. Shortly after immigrating to United States, Fiona fell tremendously sick and unable to work or function properly. And in fact, she had to get a service dog to help her around. But with her sickness, she was able to find Quanta Therapies, where she became the founder and built a successful company. Not only that, she's managed to open several businesses, and currently she manages 5 completely different companies. She's so full of creativity and always finds ways to help people through her business passions. So let's dive right in. All right, Fiona, thank you so much for coming on to the Immigrant Entrepreneurs Podcast. I truly appreciate your time, and I'm really excited to hear all about your journey. So welcome to the show.
Thanks, Alina. It was an absolute pleasure to be here.
Let's talk about your immigrant journey. Tell us where you're from and when did you come to the United States?
I think I'm a serial immigrant as well as a serial entrepreneur. I was born in Malaysia and I moved as a child to Australia. So I grew up in Australia and I would say I'm Australian before anything else. And then when I got married the first time, we moved to America and my husband was Californian. So we moved to the Silicon Valley. So that's been kind of my immigrant journey, but I've lived all over the world. And my children are actually adopted from Nepal. So we spent a lot of time in South Asia as well during that journey. So there's been a lot of movement. And I think 2020 with no travel was just kind of the weirdest year I've ever had in my life.
And so, growing up in Australia, did you always know that you're going to end up in United States?
No, this was the last place I ever thought I would.
Because Australia is beautiful.
It is beautiful. I had thought that I would be living in Europe. I had all these plans to move to the UK after I finished university. And I was going to be working there and traveling to Europe. And then just before I moved to America, I actually had a job opportunity in Dubai teaching at the American University.
Wow.
So America was not on my list of places to go.
All right. So, what was it like growing up in Australia?
So I was an immigrant child in Australia, and my parents moved to Australia just at the end of the White Australia policy. And my parents are not white. So it was a really interesting time because Australia was moving into this concept of multiculturalism. And
What is that policy?
the White Australia policy started in 1901 and ended in the 1970s, where if you were a non-white person, you were not legally allowed to move to Australia. You were not legally allowed to live in Australia.
Wow.
And so my parents were one of the first, when the doors reopened to the world, my parents were one of the first colored immigrants into Australia. And it was really interesting because there wasn't any Asian stores, or there was like one Chinese restaurant and one little Asian supermarket.
Wow.
And you learned how to make everything. Like if you wanted traditional foods, my mum is Malaysian Chinese. And so if you wanted traditional foods, you had to make it yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And the immigrant community was very tight knit because you were either related to them or you knew them and you all came in at the same time. And, you
Wow.
really stood out because we actually grew up in Perth, Western Australia, which is even more isolated than anywhere else in the country. And so we assimilated into the wider Australian community very easily. And then, my parents in particular really wanted to make sure that we assimilated and became Australian. So
Mm,
they sent my sister and I to one of the oldest girls' private schools. So essentially, we grew up very, very privileged. Like we went horse riding, and our friends all had yachts, and we grew up at the races. And then Australia went through this multicultural phase where they opened up the country to a lot of immigrants of any color. And that was really interesting for us to sort of start seeing people who are darker than us or the same skin color as us, and just learning about different cultures. And that didn't exist when we were growing up and when we were little.
mhm.
And so now Australia, 20, 30 years later, is nothing like how I grew up.
Oh, yeah, I bet. And so why did your parents decide to move to Australia?
They decided to try something new, and there was a business opportunity for them. So
Mm,
they thought, why not? And they did. And so their families at that point, there was also a lot of political upheaval in Malaysia at the time.
mhm,
So their family members were moving. So we have family all over the world, living in the Middle East, in Europe, in the UK, in New Zealand, in America. Like, so we started spreading out as a family, as a big extended family. We started spreading out all over the world. So
mhm.
I always joke now that, there's really nowhere you can go without someone being related to me.
Yeah. I love it, I love it. And so did you experience any racism during the time when you were growing up at all?
We did. Racism is a very interesting thing because it's so loaded and it's so different.
Mhm,
I always tell people I'm much more comfortable with people actually in my face telling me they don't like me because of my perceived culture or the perceived color of my skin. Like when
mhm,
you're upfront and you're kind of aggressive about it, I find myself much more comfortable because I know where I stand.
mhm,
It is when they pretending everything's fine. I always say, I particularly get concerned about people who say everything's fine, they're not concerned about it, they have no questions about it, but God forbid should one of your children date outside their own race,
mm,
or having somebody of a different color in your home. I think that kind of undertone, or when you're doing business and you kind of have that gut feeling something's not right, that kind of undertone I struggle with a lot more.
mhm, got it. And so you get married and your husband is from California. Did you guys meet in Australia?
He was an exchange student in Australia.
Oh, okay.
And we met, and then we did this whole long distance thing. And this was before the internet. This is how old I am. This is before the internet. So we would save up money for phone cards to call each other.
Aw, that's cute, I love it. Okay, and so you finally get married, and then you're telling your parents that you're moving to United States.
Right. So we moved to the United States because at that time I was working on my PhD thesis at that time, and he was working in the Silicon Valley. And it just made sense because I didn't actually physically need to be anywhere. And the plan was we were going to spend 3 years in California, go through the stock option thing, make money, and go home to Australia. And well, that was 20 something years ago. And 20 something years ago, couple of children, and that was my previous marriage. So, and I'm still
Mhm.
here.
And what was it like transitioning to United States? You knew the English language,
Right.
but were there any struggles when you first immigrated?
I was so unprepared for the immigrant experience in the United States. I assumed America was very much like Australia. I mean, we kind of watch the same TV programs.
Mhm.
We technically speak the same language. The cultural makeup is about the same. And you have things like credit cards and banking and all of that. And I just assumed it was just going to be like moving across the country.
To New Zealand.
Right, to New Zealand or to
Yeah.
Sydney, or and then I showed up in America and I just went, "What is this?"
And what do you mean by that? Did
Things like getting a social security card. So one, I had to get a social security card. Then I had to get a new driver's license and like drive on the wrong side of the road
Oh,
and
yeah.
go through a driving test. But the most interesting thing was I couldn't have my own credit card and I couldn't have my own bank account because I didn't have an American credit score.
Oh, okay.
So for the first 2 years of my life in America, everything was reliant on my husband, who was American.
Mhm.
And that was a huge shock to the system. We then were told by the bank that I needed to establish a credit score for myself. So we had to go through this whole process of establishing me as a human, like a person.
Mhm.
And that was really difficult. And then when I started my first business in America, my husband had to sign on as a guarantor because my credit score was still not built up. My credit
Mm.
identity was not built up.
Mm.
And for people who are in America building a life who may not be here legally, I cannot imagine what they go through for their
Mhm.
survival because I was here legally and like I literally spent 2, 3 years going, "Oh my god, what is this?" And I
Yeah.
can't do that. And it was such a huge process, and I remember crying a lot.
And especially moving to Silicon Valley, that is I don't know about the city where you're from. I mean, it's huge. San Francisco is huge and, using the public transportation or even driving around, even walking the streets, you can get lost. It's so easy.
Right, and this was before GPS. And then people in America would give directions differently, right? They would say things like the north side of the street or stand on the northeast corner. And I'm like, I don't even know what that is.
Yeah. Oh my goodness, yeah, what a different world. And so how old were you when you moved to United States?
I was 20, I want to say 24, 20, between 24 and 26. I feel like.
Yeah. Yeah, that's super young, and, what were you studying in your PhD program?
So I was looking at, surprisingly, I was actually looking at Australian immigration history
Oh.
in my PhD program. And that ended up not being finished because I got sick after I moved to America, which I think added to the stress of moving. And then I had to learn how to navigate the medical system in America with the insurance and everything else, in addition to navigating credit scores and that definitely, I think, added to the challenge of it. And I found myself flying home to Australia a lot for things like physical therapy and chiropractic and alternative medicine because I just couldn't figure out how to do it in California.
And so did you finish your PhD program from Australia?
No, I didn't. I got so sick that I just didn't want to do it anymore. And I actually went back to school in California and became a physiologist because I needed to learn how to take care of myself. The thought of being in a wheelchair or being on all those medications for as long as they told me I was going to, for the rest of my life didn't quite work for me. So I went back to learn because I knew nothing about anatomy and physiology. So that actually propelled me to the life that I have now. So that's when you look back, it really wasn't a bad thing. It was just a very unexpected thing.
Okay, so you came to America and then was it shortly after you got physically sick?
Yeah,
Okay,
it was really interesting because, oh, actually, in addition to moving America and not having a credit score, remember I said I was born in Malaysia.
right.
And Malaysia is technically a Muslim country. And even though I was an Australian citizen, I moved to America just after 9/11.
Mm.
And they had restrictions against people who were coming from Muslim countries. So
Mm.
it was very interesting because I never had a Malaysian passport. I had an Australian passport, but they kept asking for your place of birth. And
Mm.
every time I put down my place of birth, it would red flag immediately.
Mm.
And luckily, when I was in Australia, I interned with a few politicians and they intervened on my behalf at the US Embassy in Australia that to say she's not Muslim, she's Australian, you need to process her visa. So it was kind of the whole moving to America thing felt really stressful.
Yeah, it's quite a journey. And you know what? Like everyone I talk to on this show, it's a long process. The immigration process is just broken. Any way you slice and dice it, people wait 10 years to get their citizenships. People volunteer for a period of time because they're not able to work. So,
Right.
yeah, I totally get it. And I wish the immigration process is so much easier because all of these people are coming, they're talented, they have PhDs like you're talking about. They are
Mhm.
extremely passionate and they're really smart.
I mean, the great thing was the first 3, 4 years I spent volunteering at food banks and different places just to be out there because I literally was not allowed to work. My social security card said not valid for work.
Oh my goodness. Yeah.
Um,
That's
so
crazy. All right. So let's move on with the journey. So you get completely sick. What kind of ailments did you have?
I was diagnosed with something called demyelinating neurological condition.
Okay.
And basically, the myelin sheath in my brain and spinal cord were eating itself. It's an autoimmune condition. Collectively, it's a lot of people call it multiple sclerosis because, and I had lesions in my left temporal lobe and my spinal cord, C2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. And I was in pain all the time. I couldn't walk. I had trouble moving the right side of my body. So all of this was happening,
Mhm.
and we were trying to raise kids, and there
Wow.
was just a lot going on, and I just felt like I every day was a struggle. So I went back and learned anatomy and physiology with no prior experience and no
Yeah.
plan of making it a career or what I have now.
So you wanted just to learn it just for yourself to heal your body.
I wanted to learn it so that when I'm caught up in the medical system where they're telling me I need to do this and this and this, I wanted to be a more informed consumer.
Yeah. That's very smart.
I was lucky enough that we were financially to the point where I didn't need to work full time. So I could take the time, like, the priority was to take care of myself.
Mhm.
And I will say to everybody that that was really the greatest gift my ex husband ever gave me
Aw.
was that I had this time to take care of myself and build my protocols, and the fact that it evolved into where it is now was not expected. So what happened with that was I'm an American College of Sports Medicine exercise physiologist. That's my official certification.
Mhm.
And people started calling me and saying, so and so met you and you're doing so well. Can you see my friend or can you see my cousin? Or
Mhm.
so I started seeing people privately, and I would be then introduced to different, being in the Silicon Valley, I was being introduced to a lot of biotech. And we went through that period where everyone was wearing a wearable. So I was lucky enough to be in that environment. And so companies would ask me to test their products. Company would ask me how I would use their product to treat my particular condition or other neurological conditions like stroke and Parkinson's and fibromyalgia and things like that.
Mhm.
So also being in that area, I was exposed to some really high net worth individuals who became my clients. So I just started building this little business, and this little business was supposed to take care of myself, and I would be exposed to biotechnology and protocols that would help my healing.
And the physiology, is that a certificate, a license? Is it a doctor's degree?
It's so at the moment, because I've done it for so long, you actually need to have a minimum of a master's degree plus passing the exam with the American College of Sports Medicine to
Mhm.
an exercise physiologist. And then if you're a clinic, they have different levels. You can also be a clinical physiologist, and that requires a PhD, I believe, at the moment.
Okay. So you kind of just started this on your own for your own journey. And all of a sudden, little by little, people started asking you, how did you do it? How did you heal yourself? And you kind of started to see clients on the side. Did you open up your business at that point, or you kind of just do it on the side because you just wanted to help people?
It was kind of a lot of it was doing it on the side because I was also trying to raise my kids and be with my kids and take care of myself because my full-time job was keeping myself moving.
Mhm.
But I kept getting exposed to biotech and different companies and people wanting to have help building their business. So I started doing that because if I can do it with a laptop in the hospital when I was getting treatment, that was extra bonus in my life. And it actually wasn't until 2017 that I came across a piece of technology that changed my life. And I knew I had to put my life into this because I had gone through 15, 20 years of different protocols and different biotech, and none of it had the same response. So an opportunity came out for me to start my own company and to introduce this biotech to the world. And my feeling was at that point in my life, I was actually going through a phase where I was shutting all my businesses down because I was that sick. I was doing great. I had all these clients and they were coming to see me because my protocols were helping them, but I was getting sick. And then I got so sick to the point that I was shutting everything down. And I was actually on Instagram shutting my entire life down. And I saw a friend post about this technology. And I contacted him and I'm like, you have got to be crazy. That cannot work. And he goes, and he says, well, what have you got to lose? So now he laughs at me because he kind of took me kicking and screaming to introduce me to this technology. And now I'm the CEO of a company that only does this technology.
Got it. Okay, okay. So that's how Quanta Therapies was born.
Yes. So
Okay.
Quanta Therapies is a fairly new company because of all this huge journey that I was on to get to Quanta Therapies.
Okay. So, and what does Quanta Therapies offer that you were amazed by it?
It is a wearable product and it works on subsonic, subharmonic sound frequency. So everything that exists in the planet vibrates. Everything has a frequency, everything has a sound to it, and you can measure the sound. They can measure that when you get a cold, what level of frequency your body vibrates at. So it was very interesting and kind of mind blowing that this technology has existed since World War II. This
Wow.
technology has existed because after World War II, a lot of people were really worried about how many people died during the war through weapons. And so they were looking into subsonic weapons that can disable people. So if when you hear a really horrible sound, your whole system just cringes.
Hmm.
So it was
Hmm.
kind of that level, but subsonic, where your ears can't hear, you can't audibly hear it, but your body can respond to it. So that's where that kind of technology comes from. So when you think about the remote control that opens your car door,
Hmm.
it knows which car door to open, it knows which frequency, and it has a sound wave that you can't hear. So that is basically the type of technology we're talking about, but for the human body and for living things and for things like liquids and pets. So I started, this technology was expensive and very inaccessible to a lot of people.
Hmm.
So I started Quanta Therapies to make this technology as accessible and as cheap as possible because it works. And it works because the human body is designed to heal itself. The problem is it needs to have the right stimulus to heal itself. And this product can do that for you.
So, is this a bracelet, a necklace? How do you wear it?
You can wear it several ways. You can wear it as a bracelet. We started off as a patch company. So these patches are programmed with the sound and you can wear it for 3 to 7 days.
Mm.
Then the engineers introduced me to the bracelet. And I was like, really? Bracelet? No, we really like the patches. So in since 2017 to now, when I'm actually in clinical practice, I barely use patches anymore because what I've discovered, and it's been a learning process as well. So the part of all of this is this technology has existed, but not very many people have had access to it. Now that we have access to it, we're starting to see patterns and how things work
Mm.
because frequency medicine is so new because you can't see it. a lot of the times you can't feel it. And it's so subtle. It's not like you get a jolt. You just go in a day or two, you just start feeling better, like you're sleeping better and you're not as irritated. So it's very, very subtle. So it's very hard for people to kind of wrap their head around it. But we've used this on enough people that we've kind of seen this pattern. And the pattern is it's exposure to frequency. So,
Got
for
it.
example, you get sick slowly. You age slowly. You don't feel it. You don't feel the aging process until you wake up one day and your hips hurt and your back hurts.
Yeah.
So, this is it in reverse. And we find that people who wear their bracelet, so the bracelet can be programmed exactly. So, everything gets programmed exactly like a CD or a flash drive.
Oh, okay.
So the bracelets can be programmed with the frequencies and you can wear it for a year. And then at the end of the year, we reprogram them and just recharge them again. And what we've discovered is that constant exposure to the frequency lets the body get that stimulus all the time and it has a better chance of healing. But we're still selling the patches. So the patch protocols are available actually because of COVID. We've gone retail. So now everybody can buy
Wow.
it because previously you could only get it through a practitioner because I really wasn't sure. I hadn't figured out the protocols and I hadn't figured out how much you needed and how to make the price point so that you get benefit without having to spend a lot of money. And once I figured out those protocols, it made it a lot easier. And because of COVID, a lot of people couldn't go in to see their practitioners.
Hmm.
But you can self apply the stickers or you can just get a bracelet. And for a lot of people, the price point for the protocols is easy for them to try the technology and then they will buy a bracelet because the bracelets are about $350, which is quite a bit of money to put out for something that you may or may not know if it will or will not work.
Hmm.
But with the patch protocols, you can get pain patches for $16. And
Oh.
you find out it works, then you're going to switch to a pain bracelet. Or if you have a lymphatic, I think the lymphatic is about $48. So you can try the lymphatic patches and then move on to a lymphatic bracelet. Even
Hmm.
though a lot of people I will say that the bracelets are superior in their ability to help you heal
Hmm.
because you are exposed to the frequency 24/7 the entire time. You don't have to have stickers on you. You just wear a little bracelet.
Yeah, yeah. So accessible too.
Mhm.
What kind of ailments does it heal, or what are the top ailments does the technology heal?
So remember, what we're trying to do is we're trying to change your body's environment of healing. So when the body is vibrating at optimal frequency, it heals itself. So we're not actually healing anything, we're just supporting the systems that you need. And our top bracelets, we have about 20 of them, but I can tell you the sleep bracelet is our top seller. And then we have pain, arthritis, performance, which has the sound frequency for testosterone. So that is amazing for recovery. And then I designed a bracelet called Fertility for my female fertility clients.
Oh, nice.
We call it fertility, but it's actually really great for PCOS and endo and supporting anything female hormone related. And then, of course,
Yeah.
it's the menopause bracelet, which I gave to every single one of my girlfriends for Christmas 2 years ago. And I can tell you, it is, I was impressed by it.
Wow, that's awesome. Okay, so really you can buy it just to feel better and to sleep better. You don't really need to have any disease or sickness per se, right?
No, I mean, the interesting part about my situation at the moment is people say to me, "Do you think you've been healed from your condition?" And I say to them, "I don't really know how to answer that question because the MRIs still show the lesions in my brain and in my spinal cord.
Mm.
But I have not been on any medication since 2017, and I was on a ton of them. My body has repaired itself to the point where there is, I don't have a limp anymore. I have full function of my hands. I have full sensation. I have full taste. I have full vision. There's really no symptomatic trace of my condition. But if you MRI me, I still have the lesions in my brain and spinal cord. So I don't know how to answer that question.
So you're feeling a lot better and you're not feeling any of the side effects from what you were diagnosed from, but it's still kind of lingering there.
Well, it's lingering only if I go into an MRI machine. So if I don't go into an MRI machine,
Don't go.
right. And I do my, and because of my age, I do my annual blood work. I get my cholesterol check. I do the
Yeah.
annual thing. And I actually have better blood work now than I did when I was 30. And I do post that on social media. And I do tell people, I was like, look, here's me when I was 30. Here is me now. I don't know what else to tell you other
Right,
than
right.
this is it. And it's the same thing for people who use our products.
Yeah.
And it really depends on what you want. If you have a lot of inflammation, have the lymph bracelet. I developed the vitality bracelet for my clients that were going through chemotherapy, and it's just loaded with antioxidants.
Mm.
So I also call that my beauty bracelet because if I wear that bracelet, everyone just tells me that my skin glows. So I'm just like,
Aw.
oh, have a beauty bracelet. So yeah, no, you don't have to have a condition. This is about wellness. This is about
Yeah.
keeping your body's vibration and your body's systems functioning optimally.
Got it. Okay, awesome. And so, Fiona, I wanted to go back to that story you were saying about you were about to shut everything down. You're on Instagram, and all of a sudden, your friend posts something about this. What happened? What transpired you to kind of take action? And did you get the patch from him or her and put it on and say, oh my goodness, it's working. Let's put this on the market? Or what was the story behind that?
So there was this patch, and it was actually by a different, same manufacturer, different company. And he was teaching a course on it in New York, and I was in San Francisco, and I was really sick. And the thought of getting on a plane to go to New York was not gonna, like, it just, I was just like, oh, I cannot do this. And I just gotten a service dog because, again, if I dropped something on the floor, I couldn't pick it up. I couldn't
Oh,
stand up and keep balance. So the thought
oh,
of going to New York was just ridiculous. And I called the dog's trainer, and the trainer said, just go do it. Trust the dog. The dog will get you there. So my dog and I are still a team, but I don't need
oh,
him anymore. But I tell everybody this is the dog that saved my life
oh.
because I would not have been brave enough to go to New York if I didn't have him.
Mhm.
And so I went to New York. I attended this workshop, and they put 4 patches on me. And I just remember thinking, what is happening? Something's happening. I don't know what's happening, but something is happening to my body. And I have a photo that I show people, and it's actually, I think it's on the website. And it's me treating myself with the patches 6 weeks apart. And you cannot tell it's the same person.
Wow.
So I was very excited about that technology. And I contacted the company and I said to them, I want to help you. I need to learn more about this. Let's figure out. I have all these connections in the Silicon Valley. Let's take this to the world.
Mhm.
And that did not fit into their business model. So I started learning more about the technology, and I started just really having to figure out, how do I keep having access to it myself, but on this level of being as sick as I was for as long as I was, and something this simple could help. I wanted to get it to as many people as possible because a lot of the times when I had a lot of treatment, and I was very privileged to have that treatment because we could afford it.
Mm.
And if this technology could be so cost effective and have such an impact, people need to have this.
Mhm.
Because you see people who can't get certain therapies, or they can't get certain medications because they don't have the financial resources to do it.
Right.
And I would see that, and I understood how privileged I was. So to have access to a technology that can help reset the body and to help the body do what it's supposed to do, which is heal itself, I really wanted this out in the world. So some research, and I actually found the original manufacturers of the product. And that's how Quanta started. And I've gone through to make the product even more efficient and more cost effective. So instead of wearing 40 patches, you now only need to wear three. And instead of having six bracelets, you only need to have one.
Got it. Okay. So you found the manufacturer, you contacted a few people, and then did you go back to the original post from Instagram who launched it or who introduced you to it and said, okay, let's get this going and get it off the ground and get it to everyone to be able to?
We got investors. We got a
Okay.
small collection of investors who are predominantly practitioners who had been exposed to this technology.
Got it.
And we launched probably a lot sooner than I would have liked. But I was so excited about this and I really wanted to get this out.
Yeah.
And the company has really evolved and slowed down to be a little bit more precise about what we do because we made a lot of mistakes along the way.
Right.
And the protocols are now very accessible. Going retail was a really good idea because it really meets our criteria of getting this to as many people as possible.
Mm.
And the ability to ship this all over the world is great. It's all made in America, but we can ship it all over the world. COVID put a little bit of hiccup on that. We've had a lot of packages go missing during COVID.
Oh my goodness.
And so that's been a little bit of a nightmare. But I've learned so many lessons. And it's not just that this technology saved my life, but this technology has really grown me as a business person. This process has grown me as just a much more resilient individual.
Yeah. Yeah. What a genius product that it's also healing people. So that's amazing. And how much capital did you guys raise in the first round?
So in the first, what I really wanted was to raise 600,000, but I was so excited to launch that I actually launched the company on $225,000.
Wow. Oh my goodness. Amazing.
I would say on hindsight, don't do that.
So Fiona, how old were you when you started Quanta Therapies?
I was 41, 42, 41, 42, around there.
Okay, but before then you had several other companies, right?
Yeah, I think Quanta's probably my seventh or eighth company.
Oh, wow. Okay. So when you
Mhm.
first immigrated, you didn't have a job, you created a company, right? So you
Right.
were kind of entrepreneur from the very beginning.
Yes. Yeah, because
Wow.
you had to, because you couldn't work.
Right, right.
You had to do something because I would try to get a job, like, just a simple job like a someone's assistant or a secretary. I think at that point they were still called secretaries. I couldn't do that because I had no American experience.
Mhm.
And they would say things like, "You have no American experience." And I'm like, "Well, yeah, I just got here."
Okay, so Fiona, how long did it take your business to start seeing some real traction in the beginning stages for Quanta Therapies?
We went international straight away. It took a while for us to evolve from a practitioner only company where I didn't know where I was going. I just wanted to get this product out. So I would say it probably took 2 or 3 years to sort out what I call corporate hygiene.
Mhm.
We had to get our accounting down pat. We had to get our online e-commerce online. We're still, I mean, clearly with COVID, we're still trying to figure out shipping. We had to figure out how to explain this technology and what it does to people who might not know, like who were like me when I first started, who didn't know their knee from their nose. So we've had to find that voice. We had to find what we were trying to tell people we were going to do. Because if you sit there and just go, well, it's bioresonance and vibration and blah, people will sit there and look at you and go, "What are you
Right.
talking about?"
Yeah, absolutely. Just break it down in the most simplest terms. Yeah, awesome, awesome. And so, did you have any mentors that helped you out to start your business and maybe in any of your businesses in the past?
I have been a Rotarian since I was 17. And the amazing thing about being a Rotarian is that I think there's like 2 million of us around the world. And other than all the service projects we do, Rotarians all own their own businesses and they're part of big businesses. So when you are part of a Rotary community, people will just over a cup of tea or a glass of wine will offer help. And I would say that's been one of the things that has been great for me is my Rotarian friends and my Rotary Club. And I've actually just moved to Tennessee from San
Mhm.
Francisco.
Mhm.
And I haven't contacted the Rotary clubs here yet or moved my membership. Actually, what I'm actually thinking of doing is I don't want to give up my old Rotary membership with my old club in Menlo Park in California. So I
Uh-huh.
think what I'm going to do is have my partner join the Rotary Club here, and then we can keep our Rotary memberships on both coasts.
So you eventually just tapped into all of the Rotary friends that you already had to kind of help you out with different stages of your entrepreneurship career, right?
Right. And you have to, you really have to. And there are times where you take help where you can. And I have to say, my biggest challenge doing something as big as Quanta, where it's across different tax nexuses and different counties and countries and moving goods around, was my accounting firm. I actually went through four of them before I got to this one.
Mhm.
And the thing I love about my current accounting firm is that I called them and I said, listen, I've realized that this is the thing I struggle with most. I need you to teach me the process. And they did. So it's really the entrepreneur process. I think it's not just about the passion and the idea. The entrepreneur process is learning all the parts of the business that you're not good at. But even if you're not good at it, you need to know it.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, what do you think most prepared you to become an entrepreneur? Is there anything that you can look back and see specifically that prepared you in any way?
My parents. My parents were immigrants and they went through that same experience where when they moved to Australia, they couldn't get work because they don't have local experience,
Hmm.
which I do find really strange in this global world that we live in now. That when you do still apply for a job, people do say, do you have any local experience? Do you know the local market? When you're like, well, no, I just got here. Or it doesn't matter now. And so watching my parents go through that and go through small businesses. I mean, my parents owned things like a gas station and they owned a donut shop with Chinese takeaway on the side. They did things like that. Or my mom actually started home catering and she would just cook Asian meals and sell them to neighbors. So having seen that, you kind of know that that is a path and that sometimes survival in a new country requires that kind of commitment and that kind of daring, I suppose,
Hmm. Hmm.
because there's no other option.
Right. And then you become so creative all of a sudden, like overnight. Now you got to think of ways to make money.
Exactly.
Yeah, because you don't have any resources, you got nowhere to go, you don't have any friends, any family here, you're just solo by yourself trying to figure out life in a brand new country, and all of a sudden you're making amazing products and it just works.
Right? And you just have to. And because people are like, well, what motivated you to do this? I'm like, survival. And it wasn't just, especially with Quanta, it wasn't financial survival as much as it was the survival of my body. I wanted this technology and I didn't want to get sick again. Like, you have, when you've been sick for a very long time, I tell people I still wake up in the morning and I lay in bed and like the first 5 minutes, I do this little scan of my body. Can I still feel my feet? Can I still feel my hands? And I talk to pain patients all the time and they say to me, I'm so scared to say I'm not in pain anymore because what happens when it comes back? And I said,
Yeah.
look, I know what that is. So for me, the technology in itself was for my human body survival. And then the business part just came and we just keep going because we have to.
So, Fiona, I want to talk about the beginning stages of Quanta Therapies. What are some struggles that you had to go through? Was it marketing? Was it getting out there? I know you mentioned capital, of course, that's the very first struggle, but what other struggles did you have to go through?
Because a version of this product was on the market, the other company did not take lightly to the fact that a new company had started. And they posted, I actually contacted a several lawyers to ask what I could do about defamation and libel because they started posting these videos about me, me the person, not me the CEO, but basically they would say things like, if you go to this company, you need to know that she slept with all of her investors and that's how she got money for her company. And at that point had two teenage daughters. And I remember having to sit my teenage daughters down and go, if you go on the internet, you may hear this. And I think that was, aside from business, the fact that it impacted my personal life so
Mhm.
much and such, I think that was something I was not prepared for. And I basically had to, you don't think when you're starting a business that you have to sit your kids down and go, well, you might be hearing these things about me.
Yeah,
It's not,
that's so hard.
we had to do that. And I, as a woman at that point, didn't know how to manage that. I spoke to a crisis management company because this is a family product, it's a health product, it's got nothing to do with my sexuality or my perceived sex life. And it was really interesting when I had an assistant then, and she looked at me, she goes, look at it this way. She said, you got $225,000 for apparently sleeping around. You're the best hooker on the planet. And I went, oh, okay.
Yeah, put a little sense of humor in that, come on.
That's part of the entrepreneur process that you don't think about or you don't expect.
Yeah, yeah, and you're not prepared for the unknowns because you don't know what's coming your way, but that, I mean, that's the first I've heard on this show, so, oh my goodness. You are a warrior out there. So, Fiona, let's switch gears and talk about successes. Are there any successes that you would like to outline from your immigrant entrepreneur journey?
I think building family communities around the world. That is one thing I've learned living in so many different places is when your biological family are not there to support you, you need to create community. That's the first thing you need to do. And it doesn't matter whether you're volunteering or you go to a Rotary Club or you just start knocking on your neighbors' doors. You have to form people who will support you and be that family. And I have people around the world who are not biologically related to me, but who I call brother, sister, mother, father. And I treat them the same way I treat my biological family.
Mhm.
They are the foundations for what you do in your life, and they help you in ways that it might not be money, it might not be them showing up and taking care of your kids, but it's that level of moral support. So
Mhm.
I moved to Knoxville last year, and my brother, who is not biologically related to me, drove his whole family down for over a week just to see how I was settling in here. That's family, that's community, that's tribe. And as an immigrant, you need that.
Yeah, that support definitely helps us in many, many ways because there's so many struggles and we can't do this alone.
No, no one can do this alone.
We need that love and support from other people. Yeah, absolutely. And so, Fiona, what does the American dream mean to you?
I think the American dream is that the dream is always evolving and you're not stuck. There's a lot of options. And it's not so much a country of opportunity, it's a country of options.
Hmm.
Because I look at the businesses I've started since I've been in America, and some have closed, some have sold, some have gone on to evolve into different things. And I'm not necessarily involved with them. And in addition to Quanta, I own four other businesses.
Oh my
There are
goodness.
options for so many different things. So Quanta is my main company, it's my baby. But I own four other companies and I am involved in four. So I own a holistic fertility company called Homea Health with my friend Sarah. And we help people get pregnant. Literally, we help people get pregnant in a holistic manner. And so I have that business. I have a company called JSYK Consulting, and it's a web design branding company. And
Wow.
it's teaching people how to be their voice and manage their public. I mean, having gone through the stuff I went through with Quanta, managing public relations, managing branding, managing corporate hygiene.
Through web designing?
We do it through your web design because most people come in and they go, I need a website. And you go, well, okay, what do you want your website to say? And how does the website represent you and your story and the community that you're trying to build? So instead of just saying, here's $3,000 for a website, what they do is they buy into a subscription. And usually within the first 3 months, we do build them a website, but in that process, it's about learning about branding and learning how to share your message with the world.
Hmm.
So then it becomes like a 2, 3 year commitment, as the web design is just the start of what your brand is going to be.
Okay. And what is that consulting company? What is it called?
JSYK Consulting. So then my third company is Divas Being Divas. Divas spelled DEVAS as in goddess.
Okay.
And this is a retreat company. 2020 has made us pivot, but it was a retreat company for women in their 40s and 50s and 60s who might be going through a divorce or going through being an empty nester, who basically don't know who they are anymore and just need to find a new tribe and find what their next act in life is. So we take them on retreats to foreign places, and we do vision boards, and we do spiritual energy healing, and whatever the local spirituality is, we get involved in that. And we help them connect with other people who can maybe help them build their business or help them decide what they want to do with their next stage of their lives. And the reason I started that company with my friend Leslie is because I realized after my divorce, I had no idea who I was.
Mm.
I had been a mom, I'd been a daughter, I'd been an executive wife, I'd been a wife, but I forgot how to do things for myself.
Hmm.
And I had a group of girlfriends who basically showed up one day, put me on a plane, and took me away. And again, I am so lucky. I have been so lucky in this life to have had these experiences. And when I came back, I was telling other people about what my friends did, and they're like, oh my God, I wish I had friends like that. And then I thought, you know what? You can have friends like that. Let me help you get friends like that.
So during COVID, are you guys still traveling?
No, we can't travel. So we had to refund everybody for COVID. And so we've pivoted. And what we're actually trying to do at the moment is try to form these online, like basically help you find friends online that you can have. We're going to try to have a virtual retreat online.
Zoom retreats.
Yeah, we're going to try to have that. And because one of the things we do on the retreats is Leslie and I are both herbalists. So we teach them how to brew their own potions, like the potions you saw behind me.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So we usually teach them how to blend something for themselves and how to take care of themselves that way. So because we can't do that, what we're actually going to do is for Valentine's Day, we're launching a love potion. And
Ooh.
for the same Valentine's Day, we're also launching what I've been giving my clients as the Diva blend, which is a menopause support blend. So we're doing that for Valentine's, just so that people who might not be able to leave their house or go do stuff like that can still sort of get a sense of what we do.
Okay, so Fiona, I gotta ask. Normally, people on my show have maybe one or two companies. You have four different companies, and it seems like wherever you go, you're creative with all these business ideas. Where does that come from, and how did you develop that?
I don't know. It just happens. And I'm not. So I actually spoke to a lady who reads tarot in Sedona, Arizona.
Okay.
And, I was telling her what I did, and she starts pulling these cards out. And I was like, what are you doing? And she says, some people paint, some people garden. She says, this is how you express yourself.
By developing business ideas?
Yeah, by developing business ideas
Wow.
and hoping to make a change in the world that way.
Yeah.
Because all the companies are about helping people achieve what they want, but in different ways. So she says to me, don't ever be concerned about having too many companies. She goes, they will come and go. And she says, I know how you work. She says, you want to grow them and then let them go, and then someone else can keep growing them. But they've made some impact in the world along the way. So she says, but that is how, because she says, do you paint? And I'm like, oh God, no, I can't draw.
Yeah.
And she says, well, do you garden? And I said, we might be lucky if we keep a few plants alive. I do. When the kids were little, I would crochet them blankets, but they're not perfectly square or rectangular. Or so I definitely don't have that arts and craft thing going.
Yeah.
And my partner paints and he does little drawings, and that is his outlet. And I don't have that.
Mhm.
But I think everybody needs to have that. And so for me, my businesses are my creative outlet.
Yeah. That's amazing because they're so completely different from each other too. It's not just like a subsidiary from another company and just, on the side and then branches out. Web designing, branding is completely different from Quanta Therapies. And then it's completely different from the retreat that you're doing. So all of these is such a beautiful blend. And you're right, it's helping people, it's bringing value to the world, and you're just so full of creativity, which is amazing. So, Fiona, what are some things you would advise the next aspiring immigrant that wants to start their own business listening to you right now?
Learn how to eat and live cheaply, because there are going to be a lot of lean times. Be prepared to be uncomfortable. You become obsessive about this, and then you look at your bank accounts and you go, oh my God, why am I doing this? Work hard. Like, people talk about work life balance. I don't think that really exists, because when you run your own business, you can't just take 3 weeks off. You just don't. And I, for the most part, work 7 days a week. I'm doing something every day, but
Mhm.
it doesn't take away from my life. What I've learned to do is what I call micro resets. And because I have 4 or 5 companies, I'm doing something, and you have to shift between them and the brain shift. So I have a different half day for each thing. In between each different half day, I'll go do something like go to the gym or get a massage or
Mhm.
do something for myself that's small. So it's not like I need a whole 6 hour spa day, but I will go do things to take care of myself and have
Yeah.
fun. Or we go on date night 2 nights a week where we don't bring our phones. So that's really good too. And I think surrounding yourself with people who kind of understand what you're going through. So my partner runs his own businesses, and he's just as obsessed with it. And sometimes we really do have to have rules like there's no cell phones at the dinner table. Or it's gonna get out of control.
Right, right. Yeah, and thank you so much for that advice because living cheaply is not what we normally set out to do. But, in the first couple of years of an entrepreneurship, that's essentially normally what happens. And then it starts moving and growing. So that's such powerful advice that we all need to hear. And so, Fiona, I want to wrap up with some super fast questions, if that's okay with you.
Hmm. Of course.
What time do you normally start your day?
5 in the morning.
Okay. How many employees do you have?
Across the board, we have there's probably about 10 of us,
Okay. And what about?
doing different things. Quanta, actually, we work on contractors. So we
Okay.
have contractors and we sub out things like, so we basically have about 6 people in our accounting team, but they go through a third party company, which for a small company is very, very good in terms of managing your cash flow,
Mm,
because you cannot have a full time staff that does that. So don't be, I would say, at first, when I first started Quanta, I wanted everything in house.
yeah.
And that's a luxury. Having everything in house is a complete luxury and not necessarily the best thing for a startup company.
Hmm.
So then we started just outsourcing a
Hmm.
lot of things. And by outsourcing, it's just change. I mean, because you actually really do get the expertise because that's all they do all day, every day.
Awesome.
And you're sharing them with all these other companies. So your cost comes down.
Yeah. Yeah. It's so critical to outsource and to get labor on a smaller penny than the
Exactly.
normal cost. Yeah. Okay. The next question is, how often do you watch TV in a week?
I don't have a television.
Oh, good. I like that. Okay. And the last question is, how many hours of work do you normally put in on average, say, in a week?
Oh god, I don't know. Because I am mobile, like we're all so mobile, we're on our phone.
Uh huh.
And if I run out to run an errand and someone texts me, I would say easily we put in 12 hours a day, but you don't really keep track of it.
And did you say you work 7 days a week?
Mhm. Yes, I do.
Got it. So roughly around 80 hours. Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah.
Awesome. Okay, well, Fiona, thank you so, so much for coming on to the Immigrant Entrepreneurs podcast. And oh my goodness, what an amazing journey. You have reinvented yourself in so many different ways. And I absolutely love all the companies that you're running and changing the world one day at a time. So thank you so much. And I wish you all the best of successes.
Thank you. Thank you for having me on. It was fun.
Alrighty, guys. Thank you so much for tuning in. If there are any links that were mentioned in this episode, make sure to check them out on my website under this episode to find all the links conveniently located in the show notes. I just wanted to ask for a quick favor if you could please leave a review wherever you're at listening to this podcast. Also, if you're an immigrant entrepreneur and would love to be on my podcast, please email me and we'll get connected. I'll see you guys all next time for another exciting and impactful episode. Take care.